Hi everyone. Imagine that you are trying to impress your friends with your ability to predict what will happen if you roll a die a certain number of times. For example, suppose you win if you roll 5 or 6, and you lose if you roll 1, 2, 3, or 4. Let's say you roll the die 5 times, and you win 2 times and lose 3 times. What exactly is the probability of that happening? Today, I will help you answer questions like this one. This is called binomial probability. First, you need to understand trials and outcomes. A trial is something you do. For example, you roll a die. An outcome is what happens on the trial. For instance, if you roll a die, the trial, the outcome could be that you rolled a 4. Second, you also need to think about success and failure. A success is defined by you as one or more of the possible outcomes. For example, a success of rolling the die could be that you roll a number greater than 4. That means if you roll a die and get a 5 or 6, a success has occurred. On the other hand, a failure occurs on any trial that is not a success. So if you define success as rolling a number greater than 4, failure would occur if you rolled 1, 2, 3, or 4. Next, we should figure out the probability of success. The probability of success is the number of success outcomes divided by the total number of outcomes, including the success outcomes, if all the outcomes have an equal chance. In this case, there are 6 equally likely outcomes, and 2 of them are successes. So the probability of success is 2 out of 6, or 1/3. We can expect a 5 or 6 to come up about 1/3 of the times the die is rolled. The probability of success can be symbolized by the letter P. Similarly, there is a probability of failure. This is the probability of success subtracted from 1. So in our example, the probability of failure is 1 minus 1/3, which is 2/3. The probability of failure can be symbolized as 1 minus P. Now you know how to determine the probability of success, symbolized as P, and the probability of failure, symbolized as 1 minus P. The next concept you need to know is sequence. A sequence is what happens when you conduct several trials, one after another, like rolling a die 5 times in a row. For each trial, we have either a success or a failure, so the sequence reports what occurred. For example, say we rolled a die 5 times in a row and rolled a 2, then a 4, then a 6, then a 2, and then a 5. The sequence would be failure, failure, success, failure, success. A sequence, like the previous example, has a probability of occurring, which is called the joint probability of a sequence. This can be found by multiplying the probabilities of each individual event. Let's take the previous example. We had failure, failure, success, failure, success. Now we multiply the probability of each happening, so we get 2/3 for failure, times 2/3 for failure, times 1/3 for success, times 2/3 for failure, times 1/3 for success. We can also write this as 1/3 squared times 2/3 cubed. So the joint probability of this particular sequence occurring is 8 out of 243. We can compute the probability for any specific sequence. So let's say the number of trials in a sequence can be symbolized by the letter N, and the number of successes in those trials is called R, and the number of failures is N minus R. To figure out the probability of any sequence, you can use the formula displayed on the screen. We multiply the probability of success, P, by itself R times, then we multiply the probability of failure, 1 minus P, by itself N minus R times, and we finally multiply those two numbers together. This is called the joint probability of a sequence. Now you know how to compute the joint probability of a sequence of successes and failures. The next step is to figure out how many different sequences, that is, patterns of successes and failures, have that same number of successes out of n trials.